So this is the 76th verse of the Bhagavad-gita, and the Sanskrit that it was originally spoken in by Krishna is here, and our procedure is that we read, we'll read each word, and then you repeat, and then we'll read the entire line. There's 4 lines, and then I'll chant the whole thing in the whole 4 lines, and then anyone who would like can also try to chant with everyone else responding. Books and machines, or everyone is all set? Okay. If anyone wants a book, there's books too. Rajan Samsmritya Samvadam Imam Adbhutam Keshavarjunayo Punyam Risyami Cha Muhu. Translation. O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure, being thrilled at every moment. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The understanding of Bhagavad Gita is so transcendental that anyone who becomes conversant with the topics of Arjuna and Krishna becomes righteous, and he cannot forget such talks. This is the transcendental position of spiritual life. In other words, one who hears the Gita from the right source, directly from Krishna, attains full Krishna consciousness. The result of Krishna consciousness is that one becomes increasingly enlightened, and he enjoys life with a thrill. Not only for some time, but every moment. Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskita Deshatarane. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace Srila Abhay Charan Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna on this earth, having taken shelter at the feet of the Transcendental Lord. Obeisances unto you, O spiritual first Prabhupada, then get the second. O spiritual master, she's got first Prabhupada, she get Garland. Is what I'm saying.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah. O servant of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, you were so kindly teaching the message of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Dev, and are delivering these Western countries which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. Rajan Samsmritya Samvadam Imam Adbhutam Keshava Arjunayo Punyam Risyami Cha Muhu. O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure, being thrilled at every moment. So this is the nature of transcendental and spiritual subject matter. It's ever new, ever fresh, always exciting, always completely correct, always enlightening, and a source of great happiness, and as it's described here, a thrill at every moment. Krishna reappeared just 500 years ago to inaugurate the Dharma for the age, which is the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the sound incarnation of Krishna, and all potencies and everything connected to Krishna is non-dual absolute. His name, his fame, his form, his qualities, his paraphernalia, and his leelas or pastimes, they're all one and the same non-dual knowledge. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leela Manjari, for your garland seva. Hare Krishna. Make a chair for Mataji to sit. Now, Lord Chaitanya inaugurating the Dharma for the age, or what is this prescribed method for self-realization, which automatically includes correcting all of the unwanted and bad things. Krishna, he told us in the 4th chapter why he appears. Paritranaya sarunam vinashaya traduskritam. Dharma samstapana taya sambhavami yuge yuge. In order to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, I appear in my transcendental form, millennium after millennium. Can I see a nectar of instruction? There's the 7th verse, which describes Syat Krishna Nama, that the holy name of Krishna is transcendently sweet. Thank you. Like sugar candy. Although one whose tongue is afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it's wonderful that simply by tasting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. So, the disease of being materially embodied, materially conditioned, is that which is ultimately best for us, most desirable, most relishable. We take it as something bitter, or we don't understand how it's happy, we get bored. But things which are very detrimental to us, we take that as something very wonderful and for my immediate happiness. Just like here, this is the LES, the Lower East Side, and it's a beautiful night in the middle of winter, and it's a Saturday. And what is everybody doing around this neighborhood? They're going into bars, and they're carousing, and they're like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that that's going to bring them happiness, but what that does is that makes them more and more attached to the material conception of life, more and more averse to the spiritual conception of life, more or less guaranteeing that they will repeat the process of repeated birth, death, disease, and old age, reincarnating in another body, which, especially in Kali Yuga, might very well not be a human being next time around. So this is very risky, very, very dangerous, very, very unwanted. So the definition, like Krishna was saying, paritranaya, sadhunam. Sadhu means a saintly person, a good person, a moral person. They will intuitively and instinctively know that performing ugra karma, or activities against the laws of nature, should not be done. Now here, in this verse, I was reading recently, I thought this is very remarkable. I wanted to share this particular paragraph. This Krishna consciousness movement is being spread all over the world just to remedy this gross ignorance. What is a little example in Prabhupada's words of this gross ignorance? Due to being attracted by the external features of Krishna's Maya, or illusory energy, this world of Maya is called Durashaya. This is another interesting definition, which means false or bad shelter. You take shelter of Krishna, then your protection and your eternal happiness is guaranteed. As we were hearing Krishna give many guarantees throughout the Bhagavad-gita, especially one who helps in fulfilling his desire to spread this pure knowledge to others, even imperfectly done. For such a person, devotional service, which is the real activity of life, Not karma, not jnana, not yoga, not mental speculation, not work reward. I work, I get money, where's my immediate sense gratification? Or I'll engage in some type of what I fancy spiritual life, but it's actually quasi. But the end game and the ultimate goal is to get some name, fame, profit, adoration, and distinction. That's mystic yoga system. But beyond all that are the activities of pure love in reciprocation between the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a person in his own abode, his own realm. This material world, that's we Lower East Side, New York City, is the place of illusion. This is the place to come and engage in illusory activities. Of course, illusion also comes from Krishna, and just Prabhupada would give this amazing example that he had heard from his spiritual master, that both illusion and reality are energies that ultimately emanate from the supreme original source, Krishna, and the expert electrician, just like, let's say, okay, it's wintertime, that we want heat, so that's the reality, and cold is the illusion. In the summertime, it's the other way around. So the electrician, they installed something in the house that we're living in, central heating and AC, and you have to just touch the thermostat, and the whole house will be air conditioned in the summertime, and you just set the temperature that you want, and everything is done automatically. So the electrician, just by his expertise, can make cooling or heating, transforming it. So in the same way, illusion can be transformed into reality by Krishna. So in other words, that is called yukta vairagya. That means utilizable renunciation, which seems like kind of an oxymoron or a contradiction, that I'm supposed to give something up which is bad, but then again use it for something which is good. How can that be possible? Very simple, that if the cause and purpose is for the right reason, then that which is so-called material regains its original spiritual identity. That's the interesting conclusion in the 4th chapter, 24th verse here of the Bhagavad-gita, that Krishna consciousness is the process of converting illusion into spiritual reality. So we're in plain language, simple to understand. I think it's not in Christian theology, but maybe one like somebody who knows, some English writer or Renaissance writer, maybe it's in Christianity. Money is the root of all evil, right? So we take a vow of poverty, okay? But actually money is the energy of Krishna personified as the supreme goddess of fortune. And just like a chaste wife or woman will never agree to exchange in her loving conjugal feelings with anyone else save and except her husband. So that original, or adi ras, or that original chastity and of supreme perfection of love is the meaning of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and the very meaning of Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. So her expansion is all the material energy. So the demons, they tried to steal the goddess of fortune from Vishnu, from Krishna, and enjoy her for himself. That's what is called rape, or what is it? Maybe I'm going to think of a lesser term. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. Assault. Kidnapping, or, accosting, or sexual assault. Like that. So there's the story of the Ramayana, that Ekapatni Brata, actually Krishna, he is the enjoyer of all souls. And so his dancing with millions of gopis in the rasa dance is the highest degree of morality, and all that is pious and all that is good. So those who accuse Krishna otherwise, they're just revealing their own latent envious mentality that why should Krishna dance with the gopis? I want to dance with the gopis. So when Krishna appeared as Ramachandra, he wanted to demonstrate the ideal activity of a human and of a king. So he took Ekapatni Brata, I will only have one wife. And in the Treta Yuga, many millions of years ago, this idea of polygamy now is outlawed in most countries in the world. But in previous ages, when the means was there, then actually it was seen as something very, very good. That many women, they become queens of a proper king or a proper Rajarshi, saintly king, saintly personality, and everything is provided. And the sons and daughters and children and dynasties that come from such protected and righteous marriages are very, very great. And the children and the type of people, the hierarchy that would go through generations over countless hundreds and thousands of years ago. We're talking millions of years ago, not in present times. Like they had to have a French Revolution, and and monarchy is mostly abolished. Why? Because they're just, as we're going to hear here, they're not living for the good of the people, and not in accord with the wishes of the Supreme Lord. It becomes just wanton sense gratification, ultimately culminating in one flippant and kind of couldn't care less Marie Antoinette saying, well, let them eat cake. Right? And the people are starving, and the Versailles Palace is like an unbelievable extravagance. And the so-called peasantry is like dying on the footpath. So this Ravana, he stole, seemingly, he actually didn't, it's all part of the Leela, but not to make it overly long. But Lord Ramachandra went after this Ravana, who was very, very powerful, and a lot of money and opulence. And the ultimate conclusion was he killed Ravana, and his entire dynasty was finished. So if you try to take the goddess of fortune away from her rightful enjoyer and husband, you and your civilization will be ruined in due course of time. So, we're saying all this to understand how Krishna has appeared in the Sankirtan movement of the Holy Name to accomplish the mission of Paritranaya Saruna, and how it relates to the people in general who are being held in the grip by these misleaders. People in general are this gross ignorance is, you are your body, basically we just came from chemicals, there is no next life, just enjoy, sense gratification is the goal of life, everything is very vague and hazy, and everything is just based on money, exploitation, bribery, blackmail, corruption, and just, there's no truth at all, practically speaking, on the governmental level. Is being spread all over the world just to remedy this gross ignorance. People in general are misled by blind leaders. This idea of so-called everyone's equal, we're all free, like even in our Constitution, everyone is created equal to pursue happiness, read between the lines, to pursue the material conception of life, material sense gratification. And everything, the educational system, the entertainment, the advertising, it's just all geared up to keep people in this illusion, to make them think that sinful activities, bad karmic activities, just atheistic, like if we're going to be friends and have a nice relationship, okay, and then you go all around decrying that he doesn't, such and such, he doesn't exist, he's very bad, make all this false propaganda, lies. Well, that kind of makes it kind of tough for me to be friends with you anymore, So that's how Krishna feels. There is no God, life comes from chemicals, don't engage in surrender to Krishna, do your own thing, and then it just people become bewildered. People are meant to train, we're meant to be trained to control our mind and senses, to subdue the urges of lust, greed, anger, illusion, madness, intoxication, so that our real self, our real desires, our real mind can shine forth underneath all of this garbage, confusion, and contamination. But no, the leaders, they want to keep us. They even plan how to keep keep us this way. And the so-called, liberation, you're free to do what? Engage in sense gratification more and more and more and more and more. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what is the outcome. Their decisions are very, it's all based on money and exploitation. There's no real deep thinking. The leaders of human society, the politicians, philosophers, and scientists are blind because they are not Krishna conscious. According to the Bhagavad-gita 7:15, because they are bereft of all factual knowledge due to their atheistic way of life, they are actually sinful rascals and are the lowest of mankind. Such people never surrender or cooperate with Krishna or what is the natural order of how this world is. They don't care to understand what is the actual design and cause of this world and what it's meant, why we're here, what are we meant to do, and how everything is to be organized. No. They don't want to know. They'll just concoct their own idea. Again, back to that underlying motivation, greed and exploitation. When such atheists become leaders of society, the entire atmosphere is surcharged with nescience. Nobody knows. Nescience means darkness. Real science, Krishna said, this is not a religion. Krishna consciousness is a science. Science means to know everything clearly, as it is. Conclusion, siddhanta. Sid means knowledge, and anta means the end. The ultimate, beyond speculation. One philosopher says this now. People were duped for 150 years. Darwin's theory of evolution. There was a chunk exploded, and then some little amoebas came, and from them, some type of squiggly wigglies, and then they metamorphed into, ultimately into, things that slithered and slimed onto the land, and then they stood up and became chimpanzees and apes, and now we have all nonsense. Even there's a very nice book which was put together by Krishna devotees who were scientists called Forbidden Archaeology. That the Darwinian theory of evolution people, by their carbon dating and other, ways of dating bones and fossils, showed very clearly that there were human beings on this planet millions and millions of years ago. For example, in such a condition of nescience, people do not become very enthusiastic to receive this Krishna consciousness movement. They're keeping people in the jaundice condition, diseased, purposefully, so they can be exploited. Extract all, especially young people. Who was the writer who said, youth is wasted on the young. It should be given more to the elder because they're wise, That's another feature of this material world. It's always kept in a state of perpetual, not figuring it out. Because when people kind of do figure it out towards the end of their life, that we see the mature fruit offered by a human being is in their latter stage of life, 50, 60, 70 years old, because they've figured certain things out and come to certain conclusions. But time moves them along, and then there's young people who are bewildered by their mind and senses and their lusty desires, and they act before they think. So that's, I'm sure maybe even some of you know, or if those who work in advertising, or they calculate. They sit in their meetings, and how are we going to get young people to, what's your age group? You fill out a questionnaire, this, that, the other thing. Keep them unenthusiastic. Give them sense gratification. Don't give them knowledge. And even worse, that if you don't take the knowledge from us, you won't get your degree. You won't be doctorately decorated, and you won't be able to get a good job. You won't be able to move, with pride in aristocratic society, because you don't have a doctorate that shows that you've been bamboozled and brainwashed by us, And and we got to go. Prabhupada writes in the first canto, an impartial person, means one who's spiritually trained, looks at the condition, he sees that the children of this age are being intentionally sent to the slaughterhouses of so-called education. And along the way, to get that Ivy League school or that what is it, tuition? in general? Like NYU over here, how much does it cost for tuition? What, and not to speak of living accommodations in Greenwich Village, right? How much does it cost?
50 grand a year.
And then you take a loan for those student loans if you're not a trust fund baby and daddy's not going to pay for it. And then how many years does it take to 20? And then along the way you bought a house or an apartment and you took a loan, and then you're in debt to the demons for the rest of your life. You know? Boy, oh boy, they really planned it good, didn't they? In such a condition, okay, people do not become, and they don't even know they're being fooled. In such a condition, people do not become very enthusiastic, receive this Krishna consciousness movement, just as a diseased person suffering from jaundice does not relish the taste of sugar candy. We were just reading that distribution of Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, this knowledge will make people sane in their interactions and transactions and will clear up the hazy condition of bribery, nepotism, cheating, blackmail, etc. The greatest need in human society is to distribute Vigyan, this absolute Siddhantic concluding real knowledge. And there are many, many, many people out there who are not so contaminated and covered over, and when they can read, and like Krishna is saying, and one who reads this and understands it, he's worshiping me by his intelligence. All doubts are eradicated, and one can see things clearly. However, one must know that for jaundice, sugar candy is the only specific medicine. Similarly, in the present confused state of humanity, Krishna consciousness, the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the only remedy for setting the world right. So as we were saying about the Jayarana Madhava prayer, it's a sadhana. So the supreme sadhana is the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. A very great acharya named Narottam Das Thakur, who appeared in 1534, the year that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left the planet, and Lord Chaitanya specifically marked this devotee, I'm distributing my personal prema in him. And he was a very powerful acharya, spiritual master that carried forth the purity of Lord Chaitanya's desire, intent, and his movement for many, many years after the disappearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he said that the chanting of the divine names of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, is the supreme spiritual meditation. So from the name, as we were saying, everything is related. From the name, you will realize the form. The Krishna in his personal form is the source of all other forms. Why are people attracted to want to exploit the form of another for some gratification? Because it's the perversion, ultimately, of Krishna enjoying you in your spiritual form. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master gave this sutra. Sutra means very deep wisdom, but in a very easy, understand, short few words. Don't try to see God, but act in such a way that God wants to see you. Or don't try to enjoy Krishna, act in such a way that Krishna will want to enjoy you. And that feeling or sense that my activities, my thoughts, my deepest, innermost heart's desires are enjoyed by Krishna, that unique exchange is the perfection of life. And as we were thinking, I generally tend to give multi-coursed ideas, and hopefully I can bring them all together on one plate, cooking many things at the same time. But that this chanting of Hare Krishna is it purifies everyone of all the dust and accumulated misconceptions, not only in this lifetime, but for lifetimes together. It's the supreme purification. The Sankirtan movement, glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years. And by doing that, what happens? You extinguish the fire of conditional life. Everyone, no matter how bold or brazen they are, everyone's afraid of death, unless they're self-realized, everyone. Because death is unnatural, because we are eternal. Extinguishes the fire. This knowledge automatically, bhakti and relationship with Krishna automatically includes liberation. Prabhupada took his disciples, American and European, this has made a big sensation in India 50 years ago. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master sent some of his disciples to pre-World War II Europe, England and Germany, and amazingly enough, in Germany they were very interested. And actually, one of the disciples that he sent, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, met Adolf Hitler. That's an interesting story in and of itself. But anyway, 2 German young men went back and became initiated disciples of His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. One became a lifelong devotee and actually took sannyas, Sadananda Maharaj. And it caused a huge sensation. So what to speak of Prabhupada coming with hundreds? This is just a few years after the tyrannical British Raj lasting 250 years had been overthrown and India became an independent nation in 1947, just 23 years later. So anyway, they went to Kumbh Mela, which is the largest gathering of human beings for any event on this planet. Some 10 to 12 million people go there. And it's the largest gathering for any religious or spiritual function. And it happens in this month, actually this month, Makara Sankranti. It's on the 14th, that's Tuesday, right? That is one of the most important. They have the confluence of the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati in Allahabad, in Uttar Pradesh, in north central India. And on that plain where all these 3 rivers come together, all of the great sadhus and spiritual personalities from all over India, up in the Himalaya mountains, they come down, and it's a huge forum to identify yourself. And if you're a spiritual group, you have to be there. You have to have a camp. You have to have your people there to make yourself known. So Prabhupada went there, and it's understood that if you bathe in the Triveni, that's the confluence of the 3 rivers, and it's very cold. Even though it's India, it's very cold there now. It's like, nights are like 35, 40 degrees. Maybe it's a high of 55, 60 in the day, and it rains, and there's no central heating. You're camped out in a tent, And so some of the disciples, they wanted to go and bathe. And the time to bathe, because if you bathe at that time, and that's like an hour and a half before sunrise, imagine how cold it is on a windswept plain, that you'll get liberation. Is it true, Prabhupada, that you'll get liberation? He says, yes, you will get liberation. But we've not come here for liberation. We've come here to teach Krishna consciousness. We're already liberated. So, extinguishing the fire of repeated birth and death by chanting Hare Krishna. Extinguishing the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement, and by that, it's the prime benediction for humanity at large, for everyone, for all living entities, because it spreads the rays of the transcendental benediction moon. It spreads the knowledge of the spiritual world and the spiritual identity. Vidya Vadu Jivanam. There's one school, if you see schools in India, they have names, Vidya. Like, there's one school in Vrindavan, it's called Prem Mahavidyalal, which means the love of knowledge. But what is knowledge? Prabhupada was invited to MIT, and some Indian young students, Prabhupada's like 70 years old, like 20 year, said, Swamiji, we have to study engineering. Well, we don't need this religion. It was like the first Prime Minister of India after they gained independence, Nehru, and he said, and he carried this idea over from the brainwashing of the British and the Christian missionaries, that religion has kept India in darkness. So we're saying that the factory will be the new temple, and So the Indian youth, they're brainwashed. And Prabhupada said, what is your knowledge? How to hammer, that's all. Your so-called engineering. Engineering is a fancy term for just like a, what's the big deal, So, bestowing the ultimate knowledge, vidya, the life and soul of all transcendental knowledge. If you know what is your transcendental relationship with Krishna, and it is aroused to the highest degree of ecstatic love, you become the knower of everything. Automatically. It's not that bhakti is dependent on jnana, but jnana is dependent on bhakti. And if one's knowledge is not used, or doesn't ultimately bring one to surrender to Krishna and love Krishna, then that knowledge is avidya. It's not knowledge at all. Just like people parading around thinking that they know something. But they don't know anything. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavatiya kinchanana. That their so-called good qualities, which 6 in number, and which Krishna is the ultimate reservoir of all, strength, knowledge, riches, beauty, renunciation, and what's the 6th one? Sadaishvarya Purna. Wealth, right. It's just a temporary little sprinkle for their karma, which is meant to be used in the service of the Lord, but they misuse it for demoniac propensities, all taken away at the time of death. Death is God realization for the atheist. Now you must understand, everything taken away. So, Vidyavadu Jivanam, the life and soul of all transcendental knowledge, increasing, and on that platform of transcendental knowledge, what happens? Your happiness escalates newer and fresher by leaps and bounds at every moment. Anandam buddhi vardhanam, pratipadam purnat mitas vardhanam. Therefore, param vijayate, all glories, let there be all victory to the Sankirtan movement of chanting Hare Krishna. Although Krishna consciousness may not be very palatable for a diseased person, Srila Rupa Goswami, who has written this book, nonetheless advises that if one wants to be cured of the material disease, he must take to it with great care and attention. Regulated. Just like if you're sick and you take the prescription from the physician, there's proper dosage and proper frequency. If he tells you you have to take it 3 times a day, and you'll think, well, I'll just take it 3 times a month, then it's not going to work. There's a funny story in this regard. Prabhupada told that there was a king, I think it was a Gopal Bond story. He was the advisor to the pious Emperor Akbar, who lived some 500 years ago in India. And he was like the court jester, and he would make the king laugh, and he was, like a harlequin, like a fool. He looked silly. And so the king one time said to him, Gopal, what's the difference between you and a jackass? And he took out a measuring stick, and touched the king to him and said, about 3 feet, my lord, about 3 feet. And everybody laughed. He could get away with something like that. So one time there was a yogi who was able to stay submerged up to his neck in a freezing cold river in the wintertime from sunset to the following sunrise. And he was making wagers with people that he could do it, and he was winning. So the news came to Akbar, the king. So, okay, let us go and see. So he went down with Gopal, and he had his ministers come with him. And the wager was made, all right. He went in the river, and up to his neck. They watched for maybe half hour, 45 minutes, and the king, all right, I'm going back to the palace so I can enjoy in luxury, and tell me the conclusion in the morning. And it was reported to him that he stayed in the river all night long, freezing cold. And so the king, went to and he made a sizable wager. So he asked his ministers, do something to get me out of this. I don't want to pay for this. So then the minister went to the yogi and said, you cheated. You were meditating on that ghee lamp burning on that top of the temple, let's say, at St. Mark's Place, 8 blocks down the street, And that's how you stayed warm, by mystic meditation on that candle burning, 8 blocks down the street. And the yogi's like, what? And all the people were like thinking, this ain't cool, but he's the king, so he can't say anything. So then the yogi, he goes to Gopal and say, try to fix this, okay? Try to convince the king he should pay me. He said, I have to think of a way, but give me a few days. So there was, within a week or so, there was some urgent business that the king had to attend to, some diplomatic thing, and the minister that he was counting on to go with him was out of station. So somehow or another, he was depending on Gopal to go with him. Now, Gopal was a Brahmin, and a Brahmin cooks his own meals by himself. So he told him the night before that we have to be there at 10 o'clock in the morning. All right? And so he said, yes, all right, I will cook my meals, and when my meals are concluded, I will go with you. The kid said, you got to be on time, Gopal. So it's 9:30 or 9:45 in the morning. No, 9:30 in the morning, and the king is calling out to Gopal, are you going to be ready? Yes, everything is coming. Don't worry, everything is there. It's like 9:45, Gopal, where are you? It's just now coming. And then finally, like 5 minutes to 10 o'clock, the king bursts into Gopal's room, which has a high ceiling about 12 feet in the air, and he sees this unbelievable sight. He made a tripod, with the cooking pot all the way up at the ceiling and a little votive candle on the floor. And and the king's going, what the heck is this? I'm cooking, my lord. This is heat. This is fire. I'm cooking with it. And then the king is like, what do you do? So the yogi stayed warm. He meditated. So in the same way I'm cooking. So the king understood, and he paid the yogi his wager. So the purport of the story is, if you want to cook and get the result, you have to have a sufficient fire, sufficient heat, and you have to put the pot on it and keep it there a long time. So just just kind of spiritual life, just for fashion, have my cake and eat it too. It might take you 700 lifetimes that way. So the regular cultivation of Krishna consciousness, Krishna wants to see, are we sincere? Are we serious? Actually, being in this material world, it's like an ocean of insincerity. That's another way of looking at it. So to get out of this ocean of birth and death, and out of no ocean of nescience, the key is in our hand, just to become sincere. And because we've been conditioned to be insincere, we have to pump in as many sincere activities as possible to offset. And Prabhupada would give the example that if you have a big vat of black ink, you just keep pouring white pure milk in it, and the density of the milk will force all the black ink out. You have to keep doing it. So one begins his treatment, and actually, not beginning, but the treatment of chanting Hare Krishna leads to perfection. Siddha sadhaka rupena. That means that the chanting of Hare Krishna elevates you from a practitioner to perfection. And then the chanting of Hare Krishna becomes so ecstatic. You can't bear to not be chanting. And chanting Hare Krishna audibly within the mind. In other words, the name, fame, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna, you're conscious of them at every single moment. And it's an ever newer feature. Actually, you see in the pastimes of Krishna and his associates, they're eternally meeting each other, and each meeting seems ever new and fresh. The perverted reflection of that, we want to see a new Broadway show, we want to go to a new restaurant, I want to buy a new dress, I want different fashion, different colors, whatever. It's got to be new. I've already seen it, been there, seen it, done it, I'm bored. Never like that in the spiritual world. Avidya, a misconception about one's spiritual identity, provides the foundation for ahankara, false ego within the material world. The chanting removes it all. The real disease is in the heart. If the mind is cleansed, however, if consciousness is cleansed, a person cannot be harmed by the material disease. To cleanse the mind and heart from all misconceptions, one should take to this chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This is both easy and beneficial. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, one is immediately freed from the blazing fire of material existence. So that is being marked here by Sanjaya, who has been narrating what he saw at the Dhritarashtra, the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, and he's saying that I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. So it's nice how it's described. What is the translation? Punyam, pious, or it's said here, righteous. There's pleasure is in performing pious and ritualist and religious activities. This is the transcendental position of spiritual life. The result of Krishna consciousness is that one becomes increasingly enlightened and he enjoys life with a thrill, not only for some time, but at every moment. So we'll read the next verse to conclude, to prepare us for the grand finale next week, the final verse of the Bhagavad-gita after our... So I would imagine this is the entire length of this program since it started, that this is the first time all the way through. So that's very momentous. So this is text 77. Takcha samsmritya rupam ati adbhutam hare vismayo me mahan rajan risyami cha puna puna. O king, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. In the first canto, Narada Muni, in his previous life, was a young boy, and his mother passed away, unfortunately, and he was left alone without any caretaker. He was an orphan, but he was a great personality. So he sought out the darshan of the Lord. He went into the forest and performed meditation, and Krishna appeared before him as four-handed Vishnu and blessed him with his association, and Narada Muni was overcome with transcendental ecstasy, but then the Lord disappeared. And then he related to Narada that I regret that it won't be possible for you to see me anymore in this lifetime. And he said, because I want you to hanker for me more and more. And the more you do, the more purified you'll become and the more elevated. And Narada Muni spent the rest of his life, and then he became the great Narada Muni, a person on par only with himself, such a great personality. He spent the rest of his life pining for Krishna. This eagerness, this longing, it brings one to the highest perfection. So Prabhupada writes in his purport that the form of the Lord satisfies all our mental incongruities and fulfills all of our desires. We're looking for that form, life after life. But not having that form, we're always frustrated. So there was a great shock to Narada Muni in his previous life to get that darshan and then lose it again. Purport. It appears that Sanjaya also, by the grace of Vyasa, could see the universal form Krishna exhibited to Arjuna. So, of course, as it's being mentioned here that all the forms and incarnations of Krishna's manifestation of the material energy and all the demigods, Krishna revealed that to Arjuna, that he could see that in one place at one time. Universal form. And Sanjaya, by the mercy of his spiritual master, Srila Vyasadeva, could also see it. It is, of course, said that Lord Krishna had never exhibited such a form before. It was exhibited to Arjuna only, yet some great devotees could also see the universal form of Krishna when it was shown to Arjuna, and Vyasa was one of them. He is one of the great devotees of the Lord, and he is considered to be a powerful incarnation of Krishna. So actually the Mahabharata, which the Bhagavad-gita is contained within, is by the mercy of Srila Vyasadeva, and of course the book incarnation of Krishna, the Srimad Bhagavatam, that is given to us by Srila Vyasadeva, after being instructed by Narada Muni to fine-tune and make his perfect and topmost writing, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Amala Purana, the spotless Purana, the Grantaraj, the king of all literatures, which is Vaishnavam Priyam, most dear to the pure devotees of the Lord. Vyasadeva disclosed this to his disciple Sanjaya, who remembered that wonderful form of Krishna exhibited to Arjuna and enjoyed it repeatedly. So this Krishna consciousness movement or society of devotees is an eternal reality in all times, in all places and circumstances. Prabhupada incorporated International Society for Krishna Consciousness in this very room, scratching pens on legal papers on this very floor one very hot 95-degree day in July 1966. No fans, no air conditioners. And but he revealed that the Society of Devotees is not a new incarnation. It is an eternal reality. But we're making, for legalities and things. In Vedic times, when there were Rajarshis, there was no need to, because everyone was pious and practically the whole society was a society of devotees. So that we have laws that can protect us from encroachment and we have legal rights, etc., etc. But it's not a legal society. The important thing is association of devotees. And association of devotees is Machitamadgita Prana Bodhayantas Parasparam Katayunchas Tumam Nityam Tushyanti. Tushyanti means great happiness, great satisfaction. Mahatusti. Tusti. Tusta Krishna, that's a name for Krishna. Krishna very satisfied, very happy. The thoughts of my devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered unto me, and they derive great satisfaction and ecstasy in conversing and enlightening one another. You read in exalted literatures like Nectar and Devotion that when pure devotees come together, they enlighten each other with liquid mellows, and they change transcendental colors. I'm reading the memoir of Jadharani Devi Dasi, who was the first female disciple of His Divine Grace, who saw Prabhupada in Tompkins Square Park in October 1966 at the age of 19, came to the storefront, and the only girl here, and she revealed to Prabhupada that she was an art student, and he engaged her in painting, and that she, with other artist devotees, would join her in due course of time, painted Prabhupada said they're windows to the spiritual world, but at the same time, she loved to go on book distribution. And she liked to go, her particular thing that she liked the most was to go to rock concerts. And over here on, I think it's either 6th Street or 10th Street, I can't remember, was the Fillmore East, was a famous concert hall. And she would go in there, and her line would be, because she's the artist, and she painted, she'd say, take these books, these pictures will glow in the dark. They're windows to the spiritual world. Yeah, man, cool. Going into the Deep Purple or Allman Brother or Grateful Dead concert, whatever it was, Enlightening one another and conversing about me. Actually, I can say my own story. I came upon Krishna consciousness by getting an original Bhagavad-gita with the paintings that she, Bharadwaj, and Muralidhar did under Prabhupada's instruction in Boston in 1969 and 1970. And just those paintings just blew me away so much, even more than what I read. And I decided to join the temple because of that. So people should be enlightened to the beauty of Krishna and become qualified to experience spiritual pleasure, ananda, paramananda, which makes even the greatest happiness available even in the heavenly planets to be no more significance than a penny in the street. You don't even think to look at it. So chanting Hare Krishna brings us to that progressively. So we want to take our medicine, proper dosage, proper frequency, and protect ourselves against relapse, become very, very healthy, become very, very strong, and help other people to get out of the morass created by this demoniac Kali Yuga culture. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So it's 7:20. That leaves some time for questions. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Toward the beginning, you mentioned Buddhism and impersonalism.
Buddhism and impersonalism. We were saying in Prabhupada's prayer in the beginning.
Yeah.
So Buddha, as you're asking a 2-point question, Buddha was an incarnation of Vishnu who appeared in this age of Kali Yuga, and there were several purposes behind it. This Kali Yuga is described as the winter season of the living entity, or it's the opportunity for living entities to really dive deep into sinful and impious activities because they have that desire in their heart and they get the reaction. So Buddha was sent to create a philosophy of atheism, voidism. That's what people want. But also, at the same time, Buddha appeared in India. And Kali Yuga had reached the effect that people were using, you could read law books and find just some kind of obscure clause and try to just sort of amplify it more and apply it more than it actually should be.
Out of context, so to speak.
Like that. So, in bygone ages, the Brahmins were expert in chanting mantras. Mantras, like we're saying, the Hare Krishna mantra is very great spiritual potency, this Jairadama spiritual potency. There was one king, Vena, he was like a tyrant, and he stopped all religion and Vedic sacrifice and Brahminical activity. And the Brahmins who were like the unpaid advisors to human society, they were, and the leaders in government would listen to them, they would take their advice. That's long gone now. They tried to advise him, don't act like this. But then he accused them, insulted them, even threatened them, and they became so disgusted that they just uttered some mantras, and he died on the spot. They had that potency. Such potency should be entrusted with people who know what they're doing. The Prabhupada would say, what do they use their science? To enslave everybody to materialism, and they create an atom bomb to kill everybody. What is their knowledge? So the Brahmins would, part of their procedures, they would engage in animal sacrifice, but that animal sacrifice was to show the efficacy of the mantras, and an old animal would be sacrificed, but immediately would come to life, and that body would be transformed into a brand new youthful body, just to show the expertise of Brahminical culture in uttering mantras. So by animal sacrifice, and it got to the point where even today in India, or in some religions, they put a name on it. This animal was slaughtered in a so-called religious way, so therefore it's okay for you to eat it, right? So that was being done at that time. So the poor, the so-called temples were converted into slaughterhouses. So Buddha, one of his main teachings is ahimsa. Okay? But at the same time, the philosophy of voidism, the powerful Acharya, Madhvacharya, appeared 1,000 years ago, he drove the Buddhists out of India. So now Buddhism is mainly in the Chinese countries, the Oriental countries. Krishna arranges, we have our individual karma, and then we have collective karma. Those are countries, states, nations, societies, where you even go to certain places and everybody seems to have like a similar kind of thing, Red Sox Nation or something, I don't know. Maybe I could have thought of a better example. But like here in America, people who are born here, they perform pious activities to a large degree. So we're born in an affluent, Prabhupada would speak like this 50 years ago. Maybe we could reanalyze it now, but that, to be born in a wealthy, affluent country. I've gone to India and it's like, here, we've been there, we've seen it and done it. We're not so leaping out of our skin about everything, all the big buildings and all the fancy roads and opulence and blah, blah, blah. People are more inclined to seek out alternative philosophies and That was the big thing in the 60s and 70s, the baby boomers and the people who were born of their World War II parents. We just beat Germany and Japan. We're the leader. And the British, no more British Empire. America was the empire. We're just going to settle down to gas-guzzling, McDonald-eating 1950s hedonistic enjoyment. Yahoo! That's where I was born into that. I remember as a kid, you would just eat your fast food and throw it out the window, the wrapper and everything. There was that commercial of the American Indian, and he's standing on the road and he's crying in his moccasins and they're throwing litter on it, I don't know if anybody ever saw that. So, yeah. So at the time, Madhvacharya drove. So this nihilistic and voidistic philosophy is very much attractive in these atheistic, communistic places like communist China. So, okay, this is what you want. You got it. Man proposes, God disposes. You want it? To Krishna, if you want the best thing, he's certainly inclined to give it. But even you want bad things and unnecessary things and foolish things, Krishna has to supply that too. Like we were saying, he's the source of illusion. All right, you want a philosophy? You want a rationalization? You want a knowledge that you can forget me and completely think that you're completely okay? Well, here it is. In the sixth canto, there's the Hamsaguya prayers, which were already existing in the Vedic literature, but it was chosen by one personality devotee, Prajapati Daksha, to petition Lord Vishnu. And there's one verse that says, acting from within the core of the hearts of various philosophers, the Lord manifests them to have different philosophies and get into arguments with each other, never coming to any practical conclusion. That's Krishna. Satya Sankalpa. He is, it says in the Ishopanishad, he's the self-sufficient philosopher who's fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. And Prabhupada, he would travel like in Japan and other Oriental countries, and he would see, like in some Buddhist temples, like the monks, they actually have a deity of Buddha, but they're making offerings with flowers, and they're offering food. So that inherent bhakti is there, but they don't have complete information. So Buddhism, maybe it could be a stepping stone for people who don't have the full knowledge and realization, or they don't have the fortune or whatever their destiny to have it revealed to them at the onset, but it's not a conclusive philosophy. And in a sense, it's the death of one's bhakti, Buddhism. And impersonalism is another phase of the same thing, but from a different angle of vision, which is actually, in a sense, even more insidious. Impersonalism, that you're God, I'm God, we're all God. In other words, there's no distinction between the Atma, we're Jivatma, we're small individual souls, and Krishna, or God, is the supreme soul. And the example is given, a drop of water taken out of the ocean. Qualitatively, if you put it under the microscope in chemistry class, it's the same as the whole ocean, but it's a drop. Whereas the ocean, qualitatively the same as the drop, but it's the ocean, quantitatively unlimited. So that is God. And by being, so if you say that we're all God, then your activities in gross hedonistic sense gratification, that's also godly. And they'll even make, philosophies like that too, This is very, very demoniac, actually. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. This is, you can read many books and hear many learned devotees speak on this. A very important question, very important subject matter. And actually, Prabhupada was given this epithet to his name, that he is standing against the pure devotee, the pure personalist. He stands against impersonalism and voidism, because this is like a devouring dragon that like sucks people up and destroys them.
So voidism and impersonalism is
Huh?
separate.
What is the distinction? It's
Kind of separate, but they're kind of the same.
it's
thing.
kind of the same thing.
Right. My other question too: self-realization and liberation are pretty much synonymous. Would you say the word?
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, we strive. Self-realization, Prabhupada summed it up simply that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. I am his servant. My happiness and my perfection is to see that he's pleased. Liberation is... You can read in the Nectar of Devotion, devotional service surpasses all liberation.
Right.
And the danger, and a very real danger, especially in Kali Yuga, you strive for liberation without striving for pure devotional service, you will fall down. Because your desires, you can't, it's voidism, I'm going to kill, it's a foolish, I'm going to stop all desires. How can you do that? Desire is you. You can never extinguish yourself.
Can I follow up question?
But you
Let me finish my thought, and then I'll let you take more. So, they imagine themselves liberated by austerity, penance, and whatever, but even they might achieve some type of temporary locus standi, their innate desires for relating with others, for love and reciprocation, they'll fall down to the material platform. And the best of them will become philanthropists, altruists, want to open hospitals, feed the poor, do things, cure diseases. But it's on the mundane level, because everyone has to die. Everyone has to, disease is part of this body. Birth, death, disease, and old age. So, but if you give people self-realization, like in Lord Ramachandra's time, it was on such a high level that you wouldn't even die if you didn't want to. And people would live fabulous long lifespans, and there was no disease, all this cancer and all this crazy stuff. This is because of the demons. They're even in their laboratories creating diseases. Don't get vaccinations. This is just, and if you have children, never submit them to that. Yes.
the healthy desire can be fulfilled if you do pious activities and you do service, and you have to be fulfilled. There is an end to desire. It's not always desire.
I'm sorry.
There's always, you said that there's no end to desire, but
Right.
if you do pious activities and you do service, you may be fulfilled completely.
No, I'm saying desires are always there. Desire is the concomitant symptom of the self, of the soul. So I'm just saying we have to desire the right thing. We have to desire within the right atmosphere or energy. So the culture of Krishna consciousness creates an atmosphere, a sangha or association. Prabhupada said you associate with drunkards and sex mongers and greedy, ruthless people, you'll become like them. But if you associate with devotees, you'll be your natural devotee-like self will come out more and more. Association is like a crystal glass which reflects the color that it comes in contact with. So we should a man is known by his company.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Okay.
So you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about devotional service. In the Nectar of Instruction and Nectar of Devotion, I believe it is mentioned that what devotional service should look like, and that it should be uninterrupted and
Krishna says that.
to be done with confidence and enthusiasm. And so my question is if you can give us some insight or maybe some advice on how we can continue in our devotional service with enthusiasm.
You can continue with enthusiasm by being enthusiastic. These are things that we have at our disposal. Like we're saying, Maya or jaundice makes us unenthusiastic. Unenthusiastic for the right thing, enthusiastic for the not good thing. But see, we've been given this body and mind. So if we just functionally engage it, there's one friend of mine and he's experiencing some depression, and he needs to perform an activity which he's done all his life and he's very, very good at. And I just said, just put your feet on the floor and start doing it. Devotional service is such that as soon as you start it, immediately the clouds go away. And Prabhupada put the term on his Back to Godhead magazine, this saying, Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there's no nescience. Very simple. That if you open your window and let the light come in, there's no darkness. But if you keep your shades shut, then even there's light outside, you can't benefit. You're in darkness. So just as soon as you chant, as soon as you read, as soon as you perform the activities of devotional service, the activities recommended by great devotees, immediately, Maya cannot touch you. Prabhupada gave the formula, no gap philosophy. Or what's the Christian term or the English term? The idle mind is the devil's workshop. The mind is always trying to trick us. Part of self-realization is to realize you are not your mind. There's the picture in the Bhagavad-gita that the soul is the passenger in a chariot, and the senses are the reins to the horses, which are the senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, like that. It's 5 horses, belly, genitals, and the intelligence is the chariot driver. And so if your intelligence is impure, then, and it shows the example that the horse is running amok, the wild senses, and they just bring the chariot driver and the poor passenger, the soul, over a cliff. So Krishna is saying that one has to deliver himself by the help of the mind. The mind is a tool, and intelligence is meant to discriminate. Is the mind making a right decision or a wrong decision? And we do that with children, like, no, don't play with fire. No, hold mommy's hand when we're going to cross the street. All these things are there. So the mind has to be trained. One must deliver himself with the help of the mind. For one who has controlled his mind, the mind is the best of friends. But if one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. And because the mind has been conditioned in this material world for so long, it might take some time to bring the mind under control. And that's actually like the demoniac people, they would accuse the devotees of mind control. They look at the devotees who are performing devotional activities, they're just chanting these 3 words over and over again. If anybody wants to see something very funny, go on YouTube and put "in the name of God." It was a panel discussion in Atlanta, Georgia in 1979 with Hare Dayananda Maharaj and Ted Patrick, who was one of the most heinous criminal so-called deprogrammers, And there was a devotee there named Balavanta who was even thinking of running for president back then. Very, very intelligent devotees. And so he's saying to the moderator of the program, who's like kind of a redneck southerner, pardon me if anybody's from down south, but he was like some type of professor emeritus from Emory, prestigious university outside of Atlanta University. And saying, Mr. Such and Such, we've come to this program, presenting all evidence and reason, from authorized, scriptures about the science of the soul and the existence of the soul. And all we've gotten from Mr. Patrick is slies, insults, and innuendo, I'm appealing to you, Mr. Such and Such, as Professor Emeritus, to keep this program on a professional level, We would like to ask you to ask Mr. Patrick to present his philosophy of the science of the soul. And so, and just hearing all that, he goes, well, Mr. Patrick, what you got to say about that? Where my sole concern is simply for the air that I breathe, but them Hare Krishnas is brainwashed. It's just so funny. So, what is night for the self-realized soul is the time of awakening for the materially engrossed. We do our Harinam Sankirtan every day, almost now 8 years, and I've lived in different places around the city. I lived for 2 years on we had an apartment, and the whole Ariana party lived on Pitt Street, which is basically Avenue C below Houston. And I would come here every night, every morning, and chant my rounds. And we would attend the Bhakti Center, Mangal Artik, which is right here on First Avenue. So, especially like Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, the Mangal Artik's at 5 o'clock, and I like to chant my rounds very early. So I would come here at 2 o'clock in the morning. All right, especially Friday night, and I would walk on Houston Street, Avenue B, Avenue A, First Avenue, and it's like, Emperor Nero fiddling while Rome burned, Sodom and Gomorrah, it's just like, I remember one time, I'm trying to get in there, and there was a boyfriend and a girlfriend, they were having this like absolutely outrageous fight. He was like taking it, and she was like, just like whacked him real hard in the face, you cad, you this and that, and I had to wait across the street for them to leave, and like people are vomiting, and, rowdy frat house boys take the city garbage pail, throw it in the street and block the traffic and yelling and screaming and curse words, So I come in here and, and they were building this place next door, and there was a construction scaffolding, and there'd be like a homeless person over there, and they were like the drunk kids would come and kick the homeless person, and the police would come, and anyway, so many things. And then by the time I'd leave at like 10 minutes of 5 in the morning, everything would be quiet. Everybody, all the vampires and vampiresses would go back into their coffin and put the lid down, and and then it was like peace, and the dawn was there, and maybe a few pious people would come out to get their Sunday New York Times, and and whatever, or jog around the block, So I was just wow, like they all put themselves into this drunken stupor and just completely destroy themselves, and it all ends at the time of dawn. And we've used those hours to enter deeper and deeper into spiritual cognition. Actually, we follow these rules: no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. Prabhupada called these the rules and regulations of freedom. But actually, simultaneously, and one very nice disciple of Srila Prabhupada, this is his realization, Ravindra Swarupa Prabhu, these are the rules and regulations that facilitate very advanced spiritual cognition. You can see things in right perspective. So you mentioned Bhakti Mama Bijananti Yavanyas Jasmi Tatvataha. Only by devotional service can I be understood as I am standing before you. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. What's that old song? To know me is to love me. If you don't love me, you won't know me. And just like any of us, say, you're inviting, you have your best friend or whatever, come over to the house, maybe not New York City, but another place, the key is under the mat or in the mailbox, just come in, or they have these new things, these big master locks that you can hide the key in, and people have them like, yeah, right, you get, and your friend knows that, and, hungry, get it yourself, food's in the thing, or hey, the dinner's on me, and, very friendly, and totally trust. People are not on that level, well, Mr. Such and Such, hello, yes, thank you very much, business. And then other people, the door is locked, or even worse than that, the police will be called, or we'll get a restraining order, or whatever, So Krishna's like that too, but Krishna doesn't need to call the police or get a restraining order. Only bhakti can you understand. Otherwise, you're going to be a bewildered idiot, basically speaking. Krishna has his Maya, his representatives, and that's the beautiful thing. When you go back to the spiritual world, you can open up with practically everyone. And if there's a little bit of a disagreement, it's on a very high spiritual platform, but the ultimate issue, everyone's friends. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service: being enthusiastic, endeavoring with confidence, being patient, acting according to regular principles such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna, following in the footsteps of predecessor acharyas. Krishna says, many, many persons in the past. So we read the great devotees, how did they act? And we do the same way. That's called following in the footsteps. and will reach the same goal. And it's described that the acharyas, they crossed over this fierce ocean of repeated birth and death in the boat of transcendental knowledge. We set sail from New York and land in London. That's the mode of travel before the airplanes. But when the pure devotee crosses the ocean, they've crossed to the other side, but miraculously, the boat remains on this side for us to board and cross. Even if one is the most contaminated by bad karma and sinful reactions, if you're situated in a boat of transcendental knowledge, you will reach the shore. Just don't jump off the boat. Stay on the boat. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of devotional service. So, in short, read this purport. It'll juice you up, fire you up, and make you like, yeah. Prabhu, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I'm very new in Krishna consciousness, but I'm chanting regularly and reading.
You're from India?
I'm from India.
Where?
From Banaras.
Benares, okay.
So I'm also taking, the classes regularly and trying to understand Krishna consciousness. So you said, I want to understand what is, why in Krishna consciousness, vaccination, you were saying, is stay away from vaccination. So what is the relation between Krishna consciousness and vaccination?
Demoniac people create kind of like a, lack of a better term off the top of my head, planned obsolescence. They want to, the pharmaceutical industry, how are they going to make money? Unless people have to be sick for them to make money. And especially here in America, just to go to a doctor, even to walk in the door, it's going to cost hundreds and thousands of dollars, And it's shown clinically that, vaccinations cause many unwanted things. Study it. Look it up. You'll find it online. I believe it myself. I've seen it from experience. Actually, you know what the best cure to not get sick is? To not want to get sick. For a devotee, because your purpose is very, very important. Krishna is going to be more inclined to protect a devotee who's trying to spread this knowledge as it is, without distortion, compromise, really trying to not just help people, but this is what Krishna wants. A devotee has no sense in understanding what is happiness, save and except seeing that Krishna is happy in all circumstances. So devotee is automatically very clean, hygienic, and Krishna personally protects him. That would be my brief answer to that question. So I think we've gone to the point of no return, or we've gone too long.
We'll return.
We'll return,
Next week we'll return.
but we're supposed to end the class by 7:30, and it's already 7:50. So thank you very much. So everyone, come back for the grand finale. We'll give you a little preview just quickly. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. Hare Krishna. Haribol. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.